الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Islamic Center at New York University podcast, coming to you straight from the heart of New York City. We're building an amazing Muslim community here at ICNYU where everyone is welcomed and respected no matter where you're from or where you're at. This is the place to be. So open your ears and your heart and come along with us on another life-changing journey. Bismillah.
Bismillah, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So we've been looking at a text called the Book of Assistance by Sheikh, whose name is Imam Al-Haddad, rahimahullah. If you want to pull it up on your phones, you just Google the Book of Assistance PDF. The first link that pops up is the text we've been looking at. And this is a book that takes its reader through a roadmap around spirituality within our tradition. It presents itself in these easily digestible, concise chapters, anywhere from a page in length through 3-4 pages in length. And what Imam Al-Haddad is doing is he's creating for us a literal roadmap. We've gone through the first 4 chapters. We're on chapter 5 now, which is on awrad, having a wird, like a daily litany. We've been looking at that for a couple of weeks. He begins with first a chapter on yaqeen, which is certitude, but like deep, certain faith, right? The way that you come into this room and you have a certitude that the lights will turn on when you hit the switch. You know, you go home and you would believe reasonably that there's water that'll come out of a faucet when you turn it on. The idea of yaqeen is that you have a certainty in your belief in Allah and everything that then is stemming from our belief in the divine, belief in the Prophet, belief in the Quran, belief in the promises that are made to us through the Quran and the Hadith, a belief in an afterlife, a belief in so much of what our tradition teaches us. You believe in it with a certitude that, as similar to the way you hit the light switch, you know the lights are going to turn on. You have that kind of resounding conviction that this is real in this way. He then moves into a second chapter on niyyah. And so this first chapter is giving us a destination. It's saying this is what you want to work towards, right? Because all of us are in different starting points, but we can have common goals and objectives. The niyyah sets for us an idea that you know why you're doing before you do it. And you have a mechanism now to put yourself in check that says, am I actually following what it was that I intended to do? It's not always out of maliciousness, but it's very easy to fall into default settings that we lose track of just conscious exertion, and we kind of move through things now mindlessly in a way that you don't want to see it in a pejorative, but just as a state of being, that you can do things without thinking about it necessarily, right? You can kind of move on autopilot. Do you know what I mean? From niyyah, he goes into muraqabah, this idea that you are watching over your heart so that your heart watches over you. It's the state of wakefulness that we aspire towards that is rooted in wakefulness and awareness of the divine, right? And the fundamental ingredient to this being healthy is not just that you have a consciousness of God, but you also distill for yourself, well, who is God to me? And do you believe in a God who's simply watching you or watching over you? Right? Do you believe in a God who identifies himself as the most merciful of those who show mercy? Or do you believe in a God that's an angry old man in the sky looking for a reason to punish you? And the God of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a God that gave him courage and strength, a God that he had hope in, a God that he believed in and also drew a sense of his own self-esteem from. From there, the chapter goes into, fourthly, the inner and the outer self. So the first 3 chapters are attached to actions of the heart, right? And this 4th chapter now introduces a broader sense of self. We talked about our inner and outer selves, not just in terms of just the body or things that we might be able to say are spiritual, you know, your heart and things of that nature, but also within you are your memories. every experience that you've had, things that are things you wish you had never gone through and you wish you had never done to somebody else, let alone the things that were done to you. Thoughts that you've had that have made you afraid that you could even think something like that, as well as every positive interaction and every positive feeling and every positive experience, in addition to the spiritual heart, the qalb, the ruh, the soul, the nafs, the lower self, irada, sheer will and determination, the aql, the intellect, and overall your jasad, your physical body, your physical being. And now we're in this place on awrad where the idea is that you adopt just a daily litany, a wird made up of, in the definition that Imam al-Haddad gives us on the bottom of the second page of this chapter, that is about Quran and adhkar and prayers and various forms of worship. And the entire first part of this chapter, we talked about just the importance of time management. That he says you need to have time for your food and your drink and your sleep and your sustenance. He doesn't start off by saying build into your routine things that are ritualistic and spiritual in their undertones, but you got to do the things that you have to do. But the whole point of it is that it has to be structured. It can't just be one day like this or one day like that. Potentially a day in the week might look different week to week given certain things that come up, work, class, etc. But the idea is that there's a consistency that builds itself, and that you're able to find nourishment through that consistency, that you don't sleep a certain routine every night and then sleep in overabundance on the weekend just because you have more hours now and you think it's just going to screw you up. And barakah becomes intrinsically linked to this idea of having structure, and barakah is about being able to do more with less, right? Just to kind of recap where we are. Does any of this sound familiar to people? What we talked about? Yeah, good. I'm glad one person, yeah, there we go. And so we're gonna go back into this chapter if people want to open it up. It's the 5th chapter on awrad. It's on regular devotions. And so if we go to the bottom of the second page that starts, awrad usually take the form of supererogatory prayers, and we can just start reading from there. Can somebody start? Anybody? Yeah, go for it.
Awrad usually take the form of supererogatory prayers, Quran recitations, the acquisition of knowledge, invocation, dhikr, and reflection, fiqh. We shall now mention some of the properties with which these religious activities need to be performed.
Keep going.
You must have a wird of supererogatory prayers, in addition to the textually established ones, and should assign a definite time for it and a definite number which you constantly sustain. Some of our virtuous predecessors, may God have mercy on them, had a wird of 1,000 rak'ahs each day and night. Such, for instance, was Ali, son of al-Hussein, may God be pleased with them both. Others had a wird of 500, 300, and so on.
You keep going, yeah.
Know that the ritual prayer has an outer form and an inner reality. You will not have established the prayer and its outward properties, such as correct standing, prostration, tasbih, recitation, bowing, and so forth, until you have established both its outer aspect and its reality. As for its outer aspect, this constitutes those obligatory conditions set forth by God, while its reality is that one be present with God, sincerely intend it to be purely for his sake, approach him with complete resolution, and collect one's heart so that one's thought is restricted to the prayer and nothing else, and maintain the courtesies necessary for communing with God. The Prophet has said, may blessings and peace be upon him, the man in prayer is communing with his Lord, and when the servant rises to his prayer, God turns his face towards him.
Okay, what I'd like you to do, just for 3 minutes, turn to the person next to you in this paragraph that says, know that the ritual prayer has an outer form. It starts with that. What are you taking away from it? Just so we can get everybody talking to each other. It's going to be a little shorter of a session today, so we want to get everyone in the mode of kind of conversing. So this paragraph, what is it saying to you? What are you taking from it? Just this one paragraph, and then we'll come back and discuss. Go for it. Let's come back. Somebody asked me, why do I ask you all to talk to each other? You have like important insights on things. You also want to get comfortable in being able to speak about religion. It'll deepen your connection to your faith so that you know that it's okay for you to think critically about it. And others will likely be able to benefit from insights that nobody's going to be able to be entirely absolute in what they can tell you. And two, most of you probably don't have people or places that you sit down with in regularity to just talk to about Islam and what Islam means to them and what it means to you, right? And it's replenishing. Even if you think like it's not, or it might be something that you aren't like directly consciously aware of, it's actually helping your heart to be with other Muslims, to talk about your religion with each other. Do you know what I mean? And you think about most of your day, how often does that happen? Do you know? Likely it's not happening as much as you might think it should be. And so it's just something you want to get into the habit of. And even outside this space, sometimes you could sit with people as you're hanging out and you could say, hey, what do you think about such and such a thing? And then you have the safety of not having to speak only the right thing or be silent because you're worried it's the wrong thing, right? Because there's so much more that exists than just these two spectrum points. Do you get what I mean? What do we talk about? What are you taking away from this paragraph? Anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, our group talked about how oftentimes you conflate prayer with sort of this robotic sort of system of things, like movements that we do, and it's really hard to, like, it's really easy to forget that this is a really intentional meeting with you and your Lord and all of that. And it's very easy to sort of only think about the movements, and then all of a sudden you're like, Assalamualaikum, like you're finished with the salah. So like, it's just sort of reminding us that it's, yes, there's a physical movement, but it's also a present thing. Like it's a conversation between you and your Lord. It's something that you have to be doing and not for no reason. There's a reason behind all of it. So sort of trying to be more intentional and present with the salah is the goal that all of us do.
What's the reason behind all of it that you're reminding yourself of? What is it?
Oh.
Yeah. You're the one that said it. What you mean? Yeah.
Like, what's the reason we pray?
You said you have to remind yourself there's a reason behind all of it. What is that reason?
I mean, for me specifically, it's like something that your Lord commanded you to do. So like having that obligation upon myself, like I just trust that if something is told to me, then it's,
yeah. Two things that we're made for. Ibadat al-Khaliq, we are there to worship the Creator. Wa khidmat al-Khalq, and to do service of the creation. Right? That's what Imam al-Razi says. This is why you're made. Right? Ibadat al-Khaliq wa khidmat al-Khalq. Like worship the Creator, serve the creation. You know, so one intention, and there can be multiplicity of intention, is that this is an act of worship. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that we talked about some of the specific things, and like we were trying to think about it. For example, how when we're in sujood we say Subhana Rabbiyal A'la. So there's that like consciousness of the fact that we're at the lowest point where our nose and our forehead is touching, and then we're thinking about Allah who's the highest. Or something like we were talking about while praying, we it can be used to like ground us from the struggles we're going through, like because everyone goes through struggles, but when you're praying you realize like all of this is really just temporary. Like really, how bad could it be in the grand scheme of eternity? A few months, years can be not that big. So it's a good way to kind of ground ourselves and bring that peace back.
Say something.
I think to elaborate on this point, because we were all in the same group, I think in terms of like thinking about just from the get, like the first thing that you say is Allahu Akbar, right? So that grounds you in knowing that Allah is greater than anything that's going on, any commotion that you're going to have at work, any commotion that you're going to have in school or anything, right? Like God is greater than all this, and this is my time, like even Imam Khalid quotes that this is your time to commune with Allah, right? So this is a one-on-one between you and Allah, and if you're gonna vent or if you're gonna do whatever, this is like a place of refuge for you, and you know, to communicate with your Creator.
Great. Other thoughts? Yeah.
I think generally we're all sometimes very consumed with our daily life, and I'm guilty of this, as probably many, that when you're praying, your mind is rushing to a lot of different things, whether it's your job, whether it's what you have to do later on, your family, etc. And so I feel that reading this paragraph kind of is a big reminder that while you might be doing the robotic movement and stuff that has been predetermined, preset by Allah, that your salah is not complete until your inner reality, which is, you can't, there's nothing that is that pre-established other than we're saying all the, subhanAllah, you're saying the Fatiha, you're reading all these different surahs. And so you're really just kind of in that zone, and you're understanding that at that point, what you're doing, you're actually standing in front of Allah, Allah's in front of you, and you're one-on-one with Him. So that, yes, okay, you might be in a masjid, you might be wherever, but all that, if you're kind of just looking at a holistic point of view, it's all just kind of like what's happening spiritually between you and Allah. So,
why do you think he starts with like ritual prayer, salah? Because the first 4 chapters, yaqeen, niyyah, muraqabah, these are states of the heart, right? They're not like ritual practice as such. They're actions of the inward. And then he talks about the inner and the outer self, just kind of categorically. But now when he's telling you, here's something to do, why is he talking about salah before he's talking about something else? He could talk about dua, he could talk about Quran, he could talk about fasting, but he chose to talk about salah first. Why do you think that is? Yeah.
It's the first thing we're going to be asked about in the Day of Judgment.
Okay, yeah. What else?
I think it's because we need to build discipline. Because we have no control for our lives. It's all like everything belongs to Allah. And I feel like one thing that we can take ourselves accountable is through prayers. Like we were given a set of times throughout the day, so you have to pray in the morning and at night and all of that and so on. And I feel like we have control over that, over the prayers.
But what's the point of it? What's its purpose? Yeah.
I think the reason why it is salah is because salah is a way to really save and replenish all of the things that you guys were talking about before of the heart.
You're the one that said it's an act of worship, right? No.
I think that was her.
You said it was an act of worship? Yeah, sorry. I'm half asleep, guys. Yeah, go ahead. No, but I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
So I was just thinking that salah is kind of all of the acts of worship that are mandatory, and especially salah, because it's 5 times a day. It acts as a way to replenish all of those thoughts in your busy day. It brings your heart back to ground, back to level 0, what's important, and really helps you just feed your soul.
So our salah is, all of this is rooted still in this idea, right? Ibadatul Khaliq, right? You are in a place where the creator of creation is telling you what's the best way for you to worship him. There's not conjecture or assumption, I think it's going to be this, or I think it's going to be that. The foundation of worship in Islam is through ritual prayer. And here now, the idea is not just there's mechanics, an outward and an inward, but there's also an intrinsic link. That the way that you do it is through these time-tested spiritual exercises, that the mechanics are important, the outward, and the inner is important, but there's also a relationship between the two. That the doing of the mechanics in the way that it was intended to be done is the opening of the inward and the enhancement of the inward. And in the broader categorization of everything, if you have struggle, we're not talking about that. You struggle to wake up for Fajr, you struggle to wake up for Fajr, right? The realities of living in a society that are anti-black, that yield anti-Muslim sentiment, we go through it. May Allah make it easy for us. That's not what I'm saying. But the text is highlighting that if you are serious about building this, you cannot be lacking seriousness with your salah. The two cannot go in a place where an absence of a relationship with your ritual prayer is somehow seen as a success in your spiritual increase. And the mechanics of it are things that are as intrinsic to what you might have been taught growing up as a child to things that we might have glossed over. We never went past a primer text or just what somebody sat us down and told us what they thought it was. And then the difference in the mechanics start to become something where the intention isn't there and it's just more robotic, as was said. You start to become lax with a little bit. There's a difference. If you are told to face the Kaaba and your feet and your body and your entire physical being, from the toes to every part of you, is directionally aligned with the Kaaba, versus you are standing and your feet are like this. That you put your hands where they're supposed to go. You don't rest on your knuckles when you go down. You understand that the mode of dress, the state of wudu, like the timings of the prayer, the mechanics to them are rooted in the spiritual exercise being as enhanced as it possibly can. Why is this important? Imam al-Haddad is telling you as a reader that you got to do extra stuff. But before you do extra, you got to do what's fard upon you. And before you can engage in the idea of doing on top of the fara'id, you got to make sure you're doing the fard correctly in the first place. Because if I'm in a place where I have negligence, inadequacy, misinformation, whatever it is, and then I start to do it more and more, it's just going to keep building itself up and become habitual, and I'm just going to be used to it. You see what I mean? And then it becomes a little bit harder, right? I had a friend who I would pray with, and whenever he would go from like standing to bowing, he would kind of hop in the air a little bit, right? And I asked him one day, I was like, hey man, why do you hop when you go from up to down? He was my friend. You know, it's not the same as a walk into a masjid and you weaponize religion to make somebody feel like garbage. That's not what I'm talking about. That you start pointing fingers at people and you're wrong, you're wrong. This is my friend. Like, we love each other, right? So I was like, I don't know, because I'm behind him, and like sometimes he hops, it like bumps into me a bit. So I'm like, why do you do this? And he's like, what do you mean, why do I do this, right? And he just got into a place where he started to build this kind of extra mechanic in it. Could somebody say that's not important? I don't know, right? I'm not gonna judge you and why you do what you do, but it's not rooted in the mechanics of the prayer. And whatever it is that is becoming there now, it's just as problematic to say something as if, hey, that's just, your prayer doesn't count. That makes no sense. As it is to say, that's unimportant. Do you see what I mean? And you have to get to this level now where you understand part of the adab of our ta'aleem is that we revise things, right? There's a fundamental etiquette to everything in our religion. And the etiquette of learning has this variable of you go back and review, right? If you come to the essentials class we do on Wednesdays, it's for converts in our community, people who are born into Islam but trying to learn the basics. I gave an example where the grandchildren of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, radiyallahu anhuma, Hassan and Hussein, these are the sayyids of the shabab of Jannah, right? These are like the grandchildren of the Messenger of God. They grow up in the madrasa of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they see an elder companion who is making a mistake in his wudu. And so they have adab, right? They're not what many of us are today. Just straight to your face, that's wrong, this is wrong, I know because I read this one thing. It's spiritual immaturity to believe you know every opinion on everything. And you have to have a sense of compassion when you are seeking to give advice to somebody. And so these two are children, and they talk to each other, radiallahu anhuma, and they say, like, we should devise a plan. They make a kind of a game out of the issue. And they say, let's ask that elder companion to see which one of us does wudu the best. And they both do wudu, and then one of them makes the mistake that he makes, and then they start to have a conversation about it, and the elder companion thanks them and says, you know, they've essentially taught him something without like removing his sense of dignity. You see what I mean? But you gotta understand that this is a man who is an elder from the best generation, right? Khairu ummati qarni, the Prophet ﷺ says that the best of my ummah is my generation. Khairu quruni qarni, the best of generations is my generation. This is what the hadith says. He made a mistake in wudu, right? If he can make a mistake in wudu, so can you. If he made a mistake in wudu, you might be making a mistake. You want to think when the robotics come in, the mechanics come in, the exhaustion, the tiredness come in, the stress of exams come in, parents don't understand comes in, why is this relationship not working comes in, I have financial issues comes in, everything, the inner and outer self. This is why the chapters are connected. They're not separated from each other. The only thing that changes in our ritual is you. The formula is always the same. You're fasting for the sake of the same Lord. You're making dua to the same Lord. You're making salah to the same Lord. Allah is ghani. You cannot change God. The prayer in and of itself might have different aspects of recitation. You choose to read this Quran or that portion of Quran. The du'as might change here, but they're essentially still the same, formulaically, mechanically. The only thing that changes in any of these things is the presence of yourself that you're bringing to it. You see what I mean? And when the exhaustion sets in and the mechanics sets in, sometimes when you're in a haste and you're just throwing water on your face, making some variation of wudu, you're going to get out of it what you put into it, is what Imam al-Haddad says. Doesn't mean you have to hate on yourself, because we have hadith that tell us towards the end of time, holding on to a sunnah is going to feel like you're holding on to a flaming coal in your hand, right? We have to be compassionate towards each other and have a sense of self-love. But for the purposes of what we're talking about here, the enhancement of your celestial self, your inner self, the part of you that's going to continue on after the body remains in this world and goes back to the dust from which it came. May Allah make the best of our deeds the last of our deeds. The things that are going to illuminate that part of your inside, the mechanics are important. And you and I at this stage have to get to a place where we have beyond just cursory familiarity with them. What are the actual windows of time? And not going off of just like what other people say, because it can also create chaos inside. I sat with a student here the other day who's in a place where she thinks she's the worst Muslim ever. May Allah make it easy for her. She's trying to adjust now to school, new routines, all different kinds of things. And she's got whatever class schedule that makes it hard for her to pray. But somebody told her that you pray your prayer the minute the prayer comes in. And she said, I don't know how to do this. And I said, why are you doing it? And she said, aren't we supposed to X, Y, or Z? I said, no, man. The hadith says to the Prophet ﷺ, what's the best of actions? And the Prophet, in one narration, there's tons of hadith that this question is posed. He says, salah, your prayer, ala waqtiha, upon its time. And what the meaning of this that's taught to us is that in the window of time. And then I put on the whiteboard in my office different the windows of time. And she's looking at this thing and she's like, you're telling me I had like 3 hours to pray Dhuhr? And I was like, yeah, you did. And she's like, and I can pray Isha from like this time till that time? I was like, yeah. But do you see where shaitan comes in? And it can go in either direction. Each of us is varied. We don't live in a place where Jummah is a holiday. You go to work on Jummah, you go to class. You're not in a place where everybody that you see out there is practicing your religion, let alone religion in and of itself. You want to also see that a familiarity with the mechanics, the fiqh of things, will help you strategically in the course of your day, and then not make it necessary for you to choose something over your deen. Because there's a lot of different ways for it to formulate itself, but you gotta get to a place where you make time to learn it in that way, so that you can understand it at a deeper level. But beyond it, the mechanics are important. In order for one to get to a place where there's a resonance from what Imam al-Haddad is saying in terms of adding these luminaries whose prayer, additional prayers, 1,000 rak'ahs, 500 rak'ahs, 300 rak'ahs, it doesn't mean that you got to do that many rak'ahs. You could do 2 rak'ahs after Isha. You could do 2 before like Fajr time comes in. These are things you go at your own pace. But do you have any doubt in your mind as to whether or not those people that were mentioned were waking up for Fajr or not? Do you think they missed Dhuhr or Asr? Do you get what I mean? And the idea is just to buy into what fundamentally Islam is telling you. So it's saying that these things are things that are not just about assessment and accountability, but they are about replenishment. They are about rejuvenation. If you don't do an exercise the way the exercise is supposed to do, then how are you going to get from it when you're not doing it correctly? And that's not putting your back against a wall and saying, don't judge me. I'm not judging you. There's people that I've met in the last few months who have come to me and they've said, today was the first time I've ever prayed in Jama'ah ever. And I said, amazing, mashallah. People who have said, I've never prayed more than 1 prayer in a day in my life, and today I prayed 2. That's amazing. As somebody who in the early teens of my life struggled with prayer and didn't have a relationship with prayer, one of the greatest feelings I have every time I pray is that I'm on top of all 5 of them. And it means that much more because I was in a place where I was not consistent with them. And the fact that I could overcome that and get to this place despite judgment and despite an absence of people, but also the presence of kind-hearted individuals that were older than me and let me believe that I could be Muslim. This chapter is telling you that you want to be on top of your prayer in every aspect of it. Not just the form that you become accustomed with, but the actual mechanics that go into it. Do any of you exercise in a gym? Yeah? Do any of you exercise? Yeah? Better question? Oh my goodness. Yeah, mashallah. Yeah. Exercise doesn't have to be like crazy 3 times a day. You know, we had this guy who used to come here and my man was like, his bicep was the size of my waist, mashallah. You know, and he would work out multiple times a day, downing these shakes. And I'm like talking to him about how he exercises. And then he was like, I'm gonna show you this video of this guy who's like amazing. He's a beast. And he pulled out his phone and he showed me a video. And then at the end of it, I was like, that's you, man. And he was like, yeah, it's me. I'm a beast. That's not the mindset you have to have. Do you know what I mean? But regular like interactions with your physical wellness, right? They're going to be important because the mechanics of your salah are also things that you do until you have the capacity to do them. You don't want to get to a place when you're 50 or 60 or 70 and you literally can't prostrate at a time when you started to become open to the idea of what prostration's importance are, you know? So you're in a place where you are walking, you are exercising, you are stretching, you're mindful, because all of you is connected to the rest of you. Do you see what I mean? Does that make sense? The mechanics are important. The first thing we teach somebody when we teach them how to pray is about the sanctity of the time, hurm al-waqt. So you have to honor the window of time. And if something comes in the way, as hard as it is, you got to be ready to pray your prayer in the window of time that it's supposed to be prayed. If you got to make wudu well before the time the prayer comes in, make wudu well before the time. if you're in a place where you gotta bring your food to work or kind of be in a place where you choose things, choose your salah, choose your prayer. The idea from it is to create now this perpetuating cycle of increase that allows for you to go upward inwardly. It's not that you won't get sad, you won't get upset or angry. The Prophet has Amal Huzn in his seerah, a year of sadness, a year of grief. His ability to deal with this sadness allows itself to be something that he recovers from, because contentment, rida, can coexist with sadness. And he has balance from these spiritual exercises. So if you go to the gym and somebody's got like 3 plates on one side and 1 plate on the other, and they're bench pressing like that, you're gonna say, what are you doing, man? That fundamental notion is still rooted in this as a spiritual exercise. Somebody asks you, why do you pray 3 rak'ah at Maghrib and 4 rak'ah at Isha? How would you know the answer to that? Other than you're yielding to the divine and what he has structured for you as the best way to worship him in those moments of time. You see what I mean? And so that's got to be a starting point. You want to add on, you first engage in the base. And this is what echoed through the early generations of Muslims. Even when I'm going to Turkey tonight, may Allah make things easy for the people of Syria and Turkey, and make us from the best of their supporters. We are on a debrief call, and they're telling us all these different things, and somebody that's on the call says, how do we make wudu when we're there? Because we're going to still pray, right? The Prophet tells the companions about Dajjal, gives all kinds of characteristics, what it is that his span in this world is going to be like, the things that we'll have capacity to do, all kinds of different things. They were afraid of Dajjal. It's seen in a lot of different hadith. And when he gives this depiction of the Antichrist, at the end of that depiction, the companions say, in relation to one of the characteristics, that one of his days will be like a year, another will be like a month, another will be like a week, and the rest of his days will be like our days, right? May Allah protect us from the fitna of Dajjal. And the companions, at the end of it, they say, Ya Rasulullah, on that day that will be like a year, and that day that will be like a month, and that day that will be like a week, how do we pray on those days? That's where their thought process goes immediately. And I would argue that it's not because only assessment and accountability. I don't want to go to hell, but there's a positive frame. They feel inward rejoicement through their prayer. It is actually replenishing the way that you say it's supposed to be. That when the Prophet says to Bilal, Arahna biha, that he wants the adhan to be the source of calmness for him. That paradigm shift is rooted in this idea that you will get out of it what you put into it. So if you sleep through Fajr, it's not going to compensate from praying Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and you can't go back and pray it, it's done. You have to make it up as a thing you owe to God, but then it just comes down to what do I owe and obligations and burdensomeness, as opposed to something that's rooted in a sense of want and love, and I'm actually communing with the divine in this moment. Do you see what I mean? Does that make sense? Okay, if you can turn to the persons next to you, what are you taking away from this part of the conversation? And then we'll come back and discuss. Go ahead. So what are some of the things we're taking away from this? Anybody? We get a few people. Yeah.
So basically, how you mentioned, like, how are you going to add on the extras when your fundamentals aren't really down? So sometimes I'm, thinking like, I want to pray all the sunnahs and the nafils. And it's like, wait, I barely even prayed 2 prayers today. How am I going to try to, let me just focus on the 5. And something else that I thought was, during my lunch at work, I get the notification that it's Zuhur. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I just thought, like, there's an empty room with padding on the floor. Like, I should go in there. I have a bathroom in my classroom. I can do wudu. Like, there's no excuse. So I want to, like, implement that before Ramadan, not just when Ramadan comes, I want to implement that. So there's just no excuse. So it's like tomorrow I'm going to start praying at school, inshallah. That works.
Yeah, and Ramadan is a great strategic point where you can go to places where they're more aware now, and they'll say like, oh, you know, this is something that you need as an accommodation, right? But to go into that point too, if you're already doing it and they're like, here's this place to pray, and you are established that already, then there's that much more room for more accommodations that can kind of come up. Do you know what I mean? What else? What are other takeaways that people have? Yeah.
I just wanted to share a story.
Go for it, yeah.
So I'm currently at my college, alhamdulillah. And so there's a brother I met like in our study group, and he said he didn't get like his normal graduation, like I think he had to get like diploma or something through high school, so he dropped out. And we asked him why. You know what he said? He said because they didn't let me pray Jummah prayer. I wasn't thinking of that in high school. I was on the varsity team, playing with my friends, hijab just starting. He said salah. And like, mind you, his parents, it's not like me, like my parents and before them were Muslim and raised in an Arab country. Him, no. And that like hit me. I was like, bro, subhanAllah, like what are we doing? And look, Allah gave him an opportunity to be in college, and he's majoring in computer science, a really good major, and he's doing great, mashallah. May Allah help him. Everyone say Ameen. And he leads the prayer, and he takes his time and his pronunciation, and he worked to learn Arabic on his own. And I'm Arab, born and raised here. I struggle to even read. And look at him. He said my salah. Subhanallah. So I just wanted to share that story.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. It's an amazing story, mashallah. And may Allah give us that kind of commitment to our prayer, right? And really when we're saying a commitment to our prayer, these are where the paradigm shifts are important. We're saying it's a commitment to our hearts, right? A commitment to our relationship with our God. Do you know what I mean? A commitment to something bigger than just like the dunya. Do you know what I'm saying? Any other takeaways, thoughts, people discuss things? Yeah.
I mean, just the prayer itself, it's like a symbol of like our life, right? In the sense that, like what you mentioned earlier, that the inward and the outward are intertwined. And I was thinking, like, you know, the hadith, all the schools, all the madhab, they all base it their mechanics off of that. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, pray as you see me pray. And you know, I was thinking like the reason why both the inward and outward are important is because like we're trying to be like the Prophet ﷺ. And when we look at the Prophet ﷺ, like everything about him was beautiful. Like everything, like his inward, his outward was like in perfect balance. And the prayer gives us the opportunity to not just to become like that, but also to like reflect on where is it that we are lacking in, or not just lacking, but where we really are and what we need to work on, right? So like when it comes to the inward aspect, one of the scholars said that like what you think of outside the prayer is what's going to be preoccupy your mind in the prayer. So if you're thinking like I struggle with this, like I'm saying Allahu Akbar and like I'm like, oh, I need to check my bank account, right? I need to do this. It's like that, because that's the stuff I'm thinking about outside of prayer. So it's also a good glimpse into like what you need to work on outside of the prayer. But then, you know, we all want to be like our prayer to be like the Prophet ﷺ, and like him being the comprehensive human being, you know, as a role model for us. You know, that's why the mechanics and the inward aspect of the prayer are both important, and they both feed off of each other. And sorry, like one last thing was, a few days ago someone mentioned that, you know, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not give you the sweetness of prayer, and sometimes that could be a test that Allah is like telling us, like, are we doing the prayer because of the feeling that we get from it, or is it for the prayer itself, because it's for Allah? And so sometimes like even just doing it is good enough. Like you may not be in that state, but it's the fact that you did it, the bare minimum even, that's better than not doing it, because it's from Allah.
Yeah, mashallah. Jazakallah khair. Yeah, and these are things you want to think out, right? We talked about one intention is just this is an act of worship, that I am Abd, Allah is Rabb, and that's what I'm bringing to this, right? That's intention one. Intention two is the embodiment of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, you know, the epitome of inward and outward balance. But the Quran gives us also an insight as to other reasons as to why you want to do it in this way, right? فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ, right? The Quran says, right, that addressing the Prophet ﷺ, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ, to say if, you are from those who you want to love Allah, the love of the divine, فَاتَّبِعُونِي, follow me, يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ, and then Allah's mahabba will be towards you, right? And I don't know about you all, if any of you have ever been in love before, right? I'm not going to ask people to raise their hand if they're ever been in love, right? I am deeply in love with my wife. I fall more in love with her every day. And I love my children so much. I love all of you. And you have to understand, people ask me like, how do you go and do some of these things that you do? Despite the fact that I love each of you so much, and I'm in love with this amazing woman, feeling loved gives me a different kind of courage. Do you see the difference? Because me loving, it is a source of strength, but being loved is a source of courage, right? It helps to confront fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is that I stand up to my fears. So people reach out to me and they're like, you're going to this place? What are you going to do if there's another earthquake? What do you think I'm going to do? You think I didn't think about that, man? This is like, oh yeah, I don't have kids at home or other things. I have to do fundamentally what I have the ability to do. That doesn't mean that everybody has the same responsibilities. We're different and varied in certain ways. But if somebody asks me, how do you get yourself going? That feeling loved helps. It allows for there to be a different mode of courage. Do you see what I mean? And sometimes it's hard, and this isn't for everybody, but quite often we don't realize just how much we are loved or let ourselves be loved. And even if you don't have that individual person that takes the form of a life partner in this world, or you have challenging relationships with family and friends, may Allah make it easy for all of us, right? The default is that Allah loves you. He is Al-Wadud. And so if anybody asks you, how do you know that God loves you? Well, He loves you because of who He is, Azza wa Jal. He is, in His essence, the source of love. The prayer has so many facets to it. Replenishment, this, that. But it also becomes a mechanism that then, as it kind of removes clutter from the heart, the idea is not, well, how do I get God to love me? But how do I remove the obstacles that keep me from feeling the presence of that love? That gives me the courage to be able to go and tell somebody, I'm sorry, I cannot take an exam during Jummah. I'm sorry, but I need to pray during my prayer times. Do not schedule meetings during these times. Not on somebody else's terms. And all of it then becomes connected to it. Do you see what I mean? فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. You go in with the intention that, you know what? I'm going to pray this way because this is how the messenger prayed. And not like in a very reductive way that then creates challenges from something beautiful that sizes up other people and says, why do you put your hands here? Why don't you do this? There are diverse opinions on pretty much everything. The idea is, though, you are bringing intentionality to this. And that intentionality is on your terms. And I couldn't tell you why, but the way Allah designed all of this is that a way to increase in the recognition of divine love is to follow the messenger of God. It removes now veils and barriers. Do you see what I mean? So when you are saying, hey, I didn't even pray this prayer, why should I pray my sunnah and nawafil? No, you should pray your sunnahs, man. Don't let shaitan get in your head. You take it at your pace, you have a goal and an objective, and you work as best as you can. Between this week and next week, all I'm going to ask you to do is just look at the windows of time and honor those. Hurm al-waqt. There's a sanctity to the time. Try to see what you're doing in the late hours of the night. Is that something that makes sense that's going to cause you to then be exhausted to the point that you don't get up to pray at the time that the light from the sun is coming above the horizon. Because you can plan what you're going to do for Fajr in relation to what you do now, right? I'm going to be going to this disaster zone site. There's no bathrooms. Do you know what I mean? People are asking me, why don't you eat some of this barbecue chicken pizza and this kind of stuff? Because I don't have a place to go to the bathroom tomorrow, man. Do you see what I mean? I literally will not, where am I going to go to the bathroom? Do you know? But I have to plan accordingly. I'm going to fly on Turkish Airlines. I'm going to have a layover in Istanbul. My kids are like, oh, Baba, you bring us a Whopper and some nuggets and whatever. You can eat whatever you want. I'm smiling and nodding. I'm not going to eat any of that. My life will be ruined if I'm standing in this place. And what am I going to do then? Do you get what I mean? Let the example stay in your head that you want to treat how you plan tonight for your prayer tomorrow in that way. The du'as that you know you will inevitably have to make. Somebody is going to get sick in your life at some point. May Allah grant all of us and our loved ones only wellness in every aspect of our lives. What are you going to do with the du'as that you make now in a frenzy and the enhancement of them versus that they're not where they can be because tonight you chose to decide that haram is okay, I still have tomorrow to make it up for. Do you get what I mean? The foregoance of a sunnah, of a nafil, of a fard, that you have full capacity to do. You live in New York City where there's 200 mosques. There's a halal cart on every corner. There's water in abundance. These are reasons why people cannot make wudu elsewhere. They don't have water. There's no water where I'm going tomorrow. May Allah grant them ease. And so you think and you reflect inwardly. The foundational base of our relationship to our Creator is rooted in the gift of salah. Literally the mandate of 5 prayers came when the Prophet is on Isra and Miraj. He ascends into the heavens. And there's so much that's given to us in that experience. One of those things is the mandate of 5 prayers. It started as 50, whittles down to 5, because Musa alayhi salam, Moses, peace be upon him, keeps telling the Prophet, what did you all talk about? And when the Prophet tells him, Musa alayhi salam says, go back, your people will not do it, my people couldn't do it, you need to ask for less. And when it gets down to 5, the Prophet says, I'm embarrassed to go back. It's not to be clever or cliche, but you understand we were built and made to pray 50 in a day. And then the 5 that you do get written as if they were 50. I'm not saying it to you in a way that's about, you're the worst of the worst. No, you're beautiful. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah made us in the most beautiful of forms. I'm saying shift the perspective on what the prayer means to you. If the Creator of all creation made you and me, and made you in a way where you were supposed to pray it 50 times, and now it's down to 5 times, and brings you to a place that in adulthood you are told it's one of the things that's mandatory for you, don't you think that there's something to it, that the doing of it is for your benefit, not to just create like burden and distraction and all of this stuff, but there's actually like a point to it. Do you see what I mean? And every time you say, I'm going to choose otherwise, then you're letting go of something that intrinsically makes you who you are. You need this prayer. It's not just something that by convenience or choice, you're fundamentally wired, your spiritual self, your soul, that you pray your prayers. My father, may Allah grant him shifa, is paralyzed on the right side of his body. He can't speak because of a stroke he had some years ago. He still prays. And you could say, mashallah, that's amazing, and all these things. He doesn't, it's his prayer. He he wants to pray. Do you get what I mean? Right? But in addition to it, he still has to do it. Do you get what I'm saying? And there's a reason why. There's fundamental purpose to it. Pick up the Quran. Point number 2. So 1, between this week and next, just honor the timings of the prayers. Every one of them. Try your best. If you make a mistake, it's okay. If you're in a place where you're struggling with any of them, pick one and try to just stay consistent with it. You get past 1, do 2, then do 3. You make a mistake down the line, it's okay. What makes you human? Get back up. Shaitan's goal is to not get you to miss a prostration. His goal is to get you to miss a prostration as a means to which you believe you're not entitled to have a relationship with Allah, that you're the worst of all things. Do you get what I mean? A companion made a mistake in wudu. Do you understand? You are going to make mistakes in your practice. It's not about indifference, it's just about being reasonable with yourself. So you're in this place where 1, you honor the times, and then secondly, you want to get to a place where you start to build a relationship with them through the actual practice and implementation of this, and you start to learn about it, right? You engage in the prayer in and of itself, and reading, understanding, reflecting on it. Go through the Quran. This is the second point. Read the verses that talk about salah. What are they attached to? It's a protection from that which is fahsha and munkar, the Quran says. Right? That's what it's supposed to do. You think about the benefits, the gains, the blessings that are rooted in there. And all of it enhances now the perspective and point of this thing. You see what I mean? You live in a world that teaches you to focus on your body and to not focus on your heart. It teaches you to not even focus on your full body, but just the lower self, the satisfaction of the stomach, the satiation of sexual organs. That's what it all comes down to, pretty much, fundamentally. But you are Muslim, you appeal to your literal higher self, the heart and the mind, and you bring some of that into your worship. So if I said to you today, what does the Quran say about salah? Every single one of you told me things attached to judgment, attached to the day of reckoning and punishment. This is a problematic frame to have of religion only. If you can only tell me why it's wrong for you to miss a prayer, you're not telling me what the actual gains and benefits are from text-based evidence as to why you should long and desire to be in a state of salah. Do you get what I mean? And it's for you to read, it's for you to have that relationship with. Does that make sense? Okay, I was supposed to leave 10 minutes ago, and I knew I was not going to leave at the time I wanted to, so I gave myself a buffer zone. Building's closed next Monday. So we wouldn't have had the halaqah next Monday anyway, right? It's President's Day, NYU is closed. Our facilities, other than Jum'ah, are closed along with the university when they are closed. So we'll meet 2 Mondays from now, inshallah. We have this campaign going on for our brothers and sisters in Syria and Turkey. Alhamdulillah, in 5 days we've already raised over $500,000. MashaAllah. And you should be proud of yourselves. You are part of a generous community. We, in a given calendar year, raise anywhere from 4 to 10 times more for others than we do for what we spend on ourselves. And part of the barakah of this community is rooted in this, that we give more to others than we take for ourselves. I don't know what it is that I'm going to see when I'm on the ground there. I can tell you that I'm going for multiple reasons. 1, I'm going because I have the capacity to. 2, I love this community because when I walk around here, people talk to me like I'm just a normal person. But objectively, I realize that I have a platform. And I don't believe that Allah gave me a platform to be self-serving. I don't believe I was given the skills, the credentials, the networks that I have access to fuel my own ego. 3, I need you all as the people I love to understand how important it is to actually go and be with people in their struggles. And when you are achieving so much at various phases of your life, professionally, personally, or otherwise, you always understand what the point of all of this is, and you just get done the things that you have the ability to, simply because you have the ability to. And that's enough of a reason. Does that make sense? We're not a community that just talks about things. This is a community that seeks to do things. And pre-COVID and even through the pandemic, a lot of people leaned on us. There's already people that I know who are on the ground there that are making dua for you all. Can you imagine that? People who literally are sending me audio files because they come across posts encouraging people to contribute. A lot of this is going to die down from others. You have to every single day continue to spread the word that these people are in a place of crisis. Do you get what I mean? That's what love is. You don't stop just when it stops being popular or it's inconvenient. You become satisfied with just one post. Then you're doing it to satisfy yourself, not for the betterment of others, but to make yourself feel better. Love is about making yourself inconvenient and relishing in the inconvenience so that it's not even seen as an inconvenience. It's just about the one that I love and doing for them. Do you get what I mean? 4th, there's people in our community who they have lost loved ones in both sides of that border. People who would long to be there and they simply cannot be there. And so I go to be able to honor the deceased, say a Fatiha for those who have passed, make dua for their maghfirah in whatever wretched way that I can, because their loved ones are not able to go on their own. I need you all to think about this, especially in the prism of what we were just talking about. There's nothing nafsi that is a key to Jannah. Nothing selfish is the means to paradise. Bring to your prayer, your ritual, your worship, a sense of selflessness. When you don't make the dua that you can, you are then not including people who will benefit from your duas. When you see your fajr only as your fajr and it's just about you, then you're leaving a lot of people hanging. We can't benefit from the good that you do not do. Do you understand what I mean? And you're the only one that's going to be able to get done the things that you can individually do. So in these days and in these nights, if you have to augment your schedule a bit, then do it. Not in a sense of judgmentalness, but cut out some of the things that you know are just passing time and stop and make a dua for a minute or two. Fast a little bit more so that you can break your fast and make a dua that is said to be more accepted. Go into the late hours of the night and turn to the divine at a time when he sends his angels down to see who is invoking him, if not for any other reason other than for so many who are in a place of hardship right now. And then you allow for yourself to see how you can be a part of a process. You see what I mean? And sometimes these things are not tests for the people going through the tribulation, but they're tests for us to be able to think about us as one body that we have been made analogous to in the hadith. That if one organ is feeling pain or not functioning, the entire body feels fever. The common understanding by most would say that there is an organ in Turkey and Syria that isn't feeling well. But our spiritual system teaches us to look back to ourselves before others. And that I'm perhaps the failing organ that's now causing the rest of this ummah to be in a place of ache. And so I got to do what I can to remedy it. Do you get what I mean? I want to ask you to join me just in a short dua as we end, inshallah. And to let yourself be centered to the space. To recognize that before anything came into existence, Allah had written that we would all be here together at this moment. As you turn to Allah, you want to be here not just as a body, but fully in every part of yourself, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Inshallah ta'ala, we turn to our Lord, asking of Him and praying that He gives even better than what it is that we are invoking Him by. Allahumma ameen. Allahumma lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li wajhika wa azim sultanik. Lakal hamdu hamdan tahiran tayyiban mubarakan fi ila yawm ad-din. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad fil awwaleen wa fil akhirin. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah, and beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam. We ask that you shower your infinite mercy upon this gathering, granting each and every one who is present herein and our loved ones only the best in this world and the best in the next. We ask, Ya Allah, that if any of us has done anything for your sake and your sake alone, that you grant ease and peace to our brothers in Turkey and Syria at this time. We come tonight to pray, Ya Rabbi, for all those impacted by the earthquakes that took place in that part of the world some days ago. Shower upon them and us your infinite mercy and grant all of us only the best in this world and the best in the next. Guide the footsteps of our brothers and sisters afflicted by this tragedy, and deepen us in our trust, love, and care for them and each other, so that we might come together to help them at this time. Send them only those who will be their helpers and supporters, and protect them from any further affliction, anxiety, or anguish. Open their hearts to receive all of the love that we are sending them on this day, and envelop them in your divine love always, Ya Wadud. Grant them peace, relax their fears, and remove from them any impediment that keeps them from doing all that they are able to do. The burdens of life sometimes seem too heavy to bear. The anxiety and anguish that sits inside of us feels bigger at times than the world around us. We seem to be surrounded by a darkness that is impenetrable. Today we ask you, for the sake of our sisters and brothers who need us to be better than our best, to give us courage. Our struggles are real, but your promise is true. Indeed, with hardship there always comes ease. Remove from our hearts any fears or inhibitions, and replace them with an ever-increasing boldness to live each moment as best as we can. Fill our hearts with a fire of your love and a desire for nothing less than justice for all. Make us the conveyors of truth, the purveyors of truth, the couriers, the carriers, the upholders of truth. Let us not be swayed by false fulfillment, Ya Allah, but make us from amongst those who taste true contentment. Put strength into our voices and grant us the courage to express our feelings, to let those that we love know how valuable they are to us, to seek forgiveness from those that we have wronged, and to exert mercy towards those who have wronged us. Bring people into our lives that we love so much that our love for them moves us to be courageous, never foolish. People who we love so much that our dedication to their well-being is rooted in wisdom and mindfulness. Make us people who find strength through selflessness, not selfishness, sincerity, and never self-centeredness. Help us to see this world always through hearts that are drawn towards goodness, to silence fear and abolish anxiety, to overpower indifference and break away from greed, to eliminate arrogance and defeat racism, to be bold enough to ask of you to make us those who only do that which is good. Help us to never fear the path of truth for the lack of people walking on it, and bless us with leaders to follow who walk firmly upon it. Let our unity be not tied to uniformity of the external, but instead make us sisters and brothers of all colors, and our unity based off of a uniformity of our values and hearts. Remove from our hearts any negative thoughts of others. and help us to never partake in acts of injustice against people of any background. Even if no one else speaks, help us to always speak against any oppression, even if it means speaking against ourselves. Love your creation through us. Be gentle to them through us. Increase them in strength through us. Give them courage through us. Help them grow through us. Endow them with confidence through us. Fill them with sincerity through us. Protect them always through us. And through us bring good and benefit to the rest of this world. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, most merciful of those who show mercy. Where there is distress and agony, make us the source of calm. Where there is hate and bigotry, make us the source of love, compassion, and wisdom. Where there is indifference and intolerance, make us the source of consciousness and understanding. Make us the answer to people's prayers, and those who only do that which is good. When our hearts are heavy and they are filled with darkness, bring people to us who illuminate them through kindness, compassion, and love. Make us always the reason that people have hope in this world, and never the reason that people might dread it. Let our anger be only at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that we will work for justice, equality, and peace. Let our tears shed only for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, and conflict, so that we will reach out our hands to comfort them and change their pain into joy. And let our successes be many, as we make a difference in this world by doing the things which others say cannot be done. Just for a moment now, make your own du'as to yourself. Allow for yourself to find a certain peace with the silence that takes place within you, and understand that there is nothing that you need as an in-between when it comes to your relationship with your Lord. This is not a religion that has any type of intermediary between us and our Creator. You have that direct connection. You want to dig deep to parts of yourself that you haven't paid attention to in a while, and allow for your words to echo within your soul as your heart expresses everything that your tongue is scared to utter. But for the sake of our brothers and sisters, those who have lost loved ones in this community, those who have no news as to whether their loved ones are alive or not under the rubble that they are deeply beneath, those who are in a place of just pain and agony. For a moment now, just make your own du'as, and we'll come back and we'll end our collective du'a together. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the presence of the righteous that are here, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the barakah of this gathering, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the sincerity of the most sincere that are here, accept our dua. Ya Allah, Ya Kareem, you who are most generous, do not turn us away. for our brothers and sisters in Syria, for our brothers and sisters in Turkey, for everyone who those are their homelands, the refugees from Palestine and our Uyghur brothers and sisters, as well as others who are internally displaced in those lands, for all those who are in a place of just devastation and hardship, their loved ones, their family members. We simply ask from you, Ya Allah, for peace. Special dua, Ya Rabb, for members of our community who have lost their loved ones in this tragic earthquake. We ask, Ya Allah, that you grant them healing and peace, and you make us a means of support for them. You give their loved ones peace in their graves and entrance into the highest levels of your Jannah without any judgment, and you give them the best of reunions in the world beyond this one. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah bless you all always. I'm going to be flying out tonight, and I'm just going to run home so I can kiss my kids before they go to bed. But I'll see you all, inshallah, probably at some point next week. And if you can please be sure to continue making dua, to be checking in on each other. Definitely spread the campaign links so we can do what we can, inshallah ta'ala. And as many of you have asked as I'm traveling to keep you in my prayers, I will definitely do that. And you should understand that these things don't get suspended, right? And it's not a problem as much as you're in a place where we focus on the needs of others. It's not that it's an either or, it's a both and. So it's my honor to make dua for this community, and in a state of travel, it's a state where the du'as are more readily accepted. Inshallah ta'ala, Allah accepts from all of us and gives to us better than what we are asking Him for. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you're inspired by the work that we're doing at the IC and want to help keep it going, subscribe to our podcasts, follow us on social media, donate to help support us at ICNYU.org, and most importantly, keep us in your continued du'as. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.